copy of the agenda. We first have our invocation, our announcements, our pledge, ceremonial matters. We'll have a proclamation for Red Ribbon Week. No one will be here tonight to receive it. We'll mail it to them, but I will read the proclamation into the record. Minutes, do we want to go over the minutes now?
We can. I've got for signature, specially called meeting of July 7th, numbers 1 and 2. Work session, July 14th. Regular business, July 14th. Work
Those
session,
aren't on the agenda.
what do we have on the agenda?
The first date on the agenda is July 28th.
Because those are the ones, or those are the ones we.
I need to make a motion to amend, because we approved the wrong minutes last time. So I will make a motion to amend the new July 7th and July 14th. That would be a separate motion. And then we have July 28th, work session and regular business meeting. August 11th, work session. August 11th, regular business meeting. And that's what we've got in
Can I
action
see
minute
those?
format.
Can I see those? These aren't the ones that were in the packet, right? These are different.
I think they're the ones that I sent out.
Two of them that he sent out. What's in the packet says agenda, not minutes.
So what?
It says in the outline, in the thumbnails have been identified as agendas, not minutes. So I may want to correct that.
I think that's just the bookmark.
Yeah, the bookmark is.
The agenda actually says the minutes though. Does anyone else have any questions or comments while I'm reading it? Alright, we don't have any invited guests tonight. We'll have a planning department report from Mr. Williams.
Mr. Williams is out of town.
Okay, so we will not have him tonight.
Item may show up, and I'm not certain.
We have nothing under consent agenda. Under old business, we have a first reading on the old fire station there. The so group, does anybody have any questions or will you listen to it on our second reading on October 27th, is that right? That's the right date. Then we have the first reading on the Linwood development. I believe, have we talked to everyone, Jason? Are we going forward with first reading tonight, or are we
Well,
postponing?
yeah, we'll have a first reading on the way that we have received an amendment, to the application that we're gonna process and get on Friday afternoon.
So if we have the first reading, we'll have to address it, even if it gets postponed or withdrawn beforehand. If we put it on our agenda, we'll have to address it on the next agenda, is that correct?
If the first reading is a motion, an official motion, that you can't, then you can't postpone it past the next meeting.
Right, but if we waive the first reading and actually place it on our next agenda, and in the interim, they withdraw their application, we still have to keep it on the agenda, is that right?
As far as an agenda item is concerned, if that's not an official motion, then it's up to you. You can change the agenda as much as you like as a council.
Any other questions on that? Under new business, we have the senior center. This was, Mr. Sanders had asked us to postpone this for one more meeting. I'm assuming we're okay to go for it.
It's okay to go forward, they check with Vernon, and they will not cover it, so.
So unfortunately, I guess at the time that they did the building, the city took a discount on that stone. So in taking a discount, they waived all warranties and guarantees. So it was $120,000. That's what's going to cost us.
At least.
Some tells me it was more like $30,000.
Any other questions on this senior center? All right, next we have the SPOS expenditure breakdown. This was our special meeting. This is the, what we discussed in our special call work session, but I do have a question, Mr. Powell. I vaguely remember, we haven't done this in the past. Usually we just do the percentages that we approve for the referendum. I vaguely remember that there's a case out there that if we do approve certain projects, we can't reallocate that money to something else. So after the agenda was published, I was rethinking this. I don't know if it's in our best interest to actually do this in an official council meeting.
I don't really understand that question. You can, within the advertised categories,
Right.
reallocate the project, because you just don't know when you're doing them.
Right, but this, what's on for tonight's agenda is $347,000 to Town Green, 100, I can't remember the exact number, 150,000 to Oak Road. And so I believe this came up with a stage before, and there was a case out there that says if you advertise you're gonna spend a certain amount on a specific project, you can't reallocate that money later.
It's not project restricted, it is category restricted.
But no, I understand that for the referendum, I'm talking about after the fact.
You
So
can
if you're not
still,
familiar with that, I guess I would ask
Yeah,
council
yeah.
that we postpone this for tonight.
it's, I don't want to interfere with postponing, but if it's a recreation money, and there was a project for, that meets the category of what you're funding, parks, park reconstruction, they're usually very general categories and descriptive on the
I
referendum.
understand that, but I vaguely remember with the stage issue, we had advertised in a meeting that we were gonna use certain money for the Oak Grove Passive Park, and we were taking that money to use for the stage, and it became an issue of whether you can actually reallocate, since in a public meeting after the referendum, we had allocated that money to a certain project. And there was a Georgia Supreme Court case on that issue. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah. I'm not familiar with a case that restricts it to post-referendum project targeting with locking in and not being able to fund the
I don't see how it
project.
could be, because just because we put 347,000 to one project, what if it only comes out to 320,000? Then are you saying you have to spend the other 27,000 because we put it in this meeting that we're spending it?
If project time, if timing is the issue, then I'd go ahead and approve it, subject to ensuring that we're square with the Supreme Court.
It's not
I don't
project
know.
sensitive, is it?
No.
No, I don't know, and usually we don't do this, so that's why I'm wondering why we're doing it now, and in the past we
I have
haven't.
no clue. I don't know that do we need to do this? Nothing changes either way. We've allocated the money and we've said, here's what we want to spend.
When you go to project allocation, if you're within your class, then the staff needs an instruction, because you've never approved the allocation of the money to the specific project. And so, they need that guidance, they need the permission because it's sort of, it's a vague class to start with.
But we gave them that permission in the work session, and then when the projects actually come in front of us, we will have to approve those specific projects with specific dollar amounts.
Right. And I don't see clearly what the issue is, to be honest. I mean, whether you approve it or don't approve it, it doesn't sound like there's a timing issue. I wouldn't
If
be
I'm in
concerned about it.
caution.
Yeah, we could just postpone it
It's
and
not just
check on that
something
case
until
and
after
make sure.
between now and next meeting. Yeah.
And we can come up with some way to direct staff as to what the priorities are.
Report on city attorney's report on August 27th order for attorney's fees, Mr. Powell?
That's the agenda item is really, it's capitalized, it would be the judge's order. That was the term that he used in describing the responsibility, I think, of the mayor's lawyers and the mayor to submit a request for reimbursement. And so we've gotten an email, a grid outline, and the same bill that you'd received before. And so I was just going to give the council a report on that order, terms of it, or terms of it, and then the law surrounding the issue of paying attorney's fees, so that y'all can make a decision about. I think the court wanted it to be administratively submitted to the city council for review as a prerequisite to any ruling that's going back. So that's what we're doing. The hearing on that is the 24th of October. If there's still an issue to be resolved.
Melissa Arnold settlement?
Provided that that's one that's both executive session and public approval. You know, any settlement now has to go back for a public vote. So we put it on the agenda in anticipation of approval.
The resolution for the entrepreneur council? Is there anything to add?
No, I presented that to everyone about a week before our last work session. I didn't receive any comment, and haven't received any comments since then, so. I'm passing the resolution.
That brings us to our work session agenda. The lease of homes in Briscoe Preserve, I put this on here, I don't know if y'all are familiar, it's come to my attention, does everybody know Briscoe Preserve? That the builder, I guess they're completing the rest of the neighborhood. There was a portion of it that was incomplete, and they're completing the rest of it. And so the builder is leasing the homes directly. So the new portion is completely for lease, and several of the residents around there, the surrounding communities, are upset by that. They feel as if that's no different than multifamily housing.
Single family, multi-family.
I don't know, Briscoe Preserve was already a higher density than most of our residential homes to begin with, and so now they feel as if because the builder is directly leasing them and it's not going through a third party, that there has to be something that can be done from the city. I don't know if there's anything that can be done by the city, but I said I would put it on our agenda for us to discuss.
All right, so Mr. Powell, you doing? There's really nothing.
Is this a permitted subdivision that's under construction?
Instead of selling them, he's leasing them.
Well, I know it was done before, that property was rezoned before I was on council, so it was before 2005.
A really good practice in single-family residential homes is to use restricted covenants to bar leasing. I mean, and it's a method that keeps higher quality development, higher quality, and so that has been the tool. Whether they used it or not is private sector enforced.
That subdivision has a problem because the original builder had an HOA and then let it lapse, and they're all sitting there not knowing what to do. And they can't get some of the information they need to start it up again. I don't know that they have anybody there to lead the charge to say we need to get an HOA and get it.
Are there a lot of empty lots still?
It's probably 50%. Maybe not.
The
Well,
back portion is completely built out now, I mean, they built it quick.
It should be totally built out.
6 weeks.
So 6 weeks, the whole subdivision will be built out.
It's Pace Construction is the builder, and they're actually working for the owner, it's American Homes or something like that.
Right.
They partner up with these guys all over the place, they go around and buy distressed lots, and that's their business
Well,
model.
your person with the most interest is that company. They should be as concerned about the quality of their investment, particularly if somebody's still building and leasing, then ultimately that's probably not the long-term investment that they will hold on to. There's going to be an interest in people buying them.
it
And
sounds-
so-
What are they doing, like a
but-
lease purchase?
But it sounds like whoever the
Just like a
property
rental
owner
lease.
is, has hired Pace
Correct.
to go in and build a bunch of houses, so American Home is the one that's saying that we gotta do this. And-
Right. And there, but that's a short term, in the market, that's a short-term decision. And so they have a long-term vision that will be consistent with the cities, that is enhance value and sell it at a higher price. And so,
Well, once they lease it, they'll never sell it for new, so it's like buying a brand new car and leasing it.
So essentially, we
in
have
this
a-
marketplace, that hadn't been the case. And particularly with the townhomes, that's the only recourse over the last few years has been leasing. And so your builders have hung in, and they really are, they're selling them to the people who live in them for a large extent, but they are coming out of them. They don't build them to hold, and so
No,
they're.
no, I'm not suggesting that they're building, saying is if they're in essence renting them. I'd like, what's the conversion rate? In other
Right.
words, how many are moving from lease to purchase?
And is that anything that we can control or?
And I don't see it's anything we can control, but it would kind of be nice to know what the curve looks like. From a long-term standpoint, it would be nice to know that, in other subdivisions, they've lease converted to ownership 70% of it.
Right.
Which I would rather hear that number than hear 20% of it.
Right.
But
from
in
a
this
conversion
subdivision,
rate.
we essentially have a subdivision that is a rental subdivision, and so there's not anything the city can do about that.
It's probably already 30-40% rental before they came in.
Was there any, have you had time to go back and look at the original zoning to see if there were any?
No,
There's no restriction.
they vetted the whole thing on the way through. They didn't ask specifically about that, but the covenants drive that, and it wasn't in there. Now, I will say that these guys are doing a much better job with the product than the last guys. They all have fences, they've all got fences connected, and the grade of the construction seems.
Well, considering some of the condition of some of those lots over there and the way they were left and all the junk and
It's
everything
gonna
else,
be better, I think.
I can see it's, hopefully long-term be better, but short-term it's gotta be definitely better, just from an aesthetic.
I agree.
And I mean, honestly, I just don't see anything the city can do to go in and say, you can't rent these houses because, I mean, people are doing that in the city all the time. And you can't tell somebody I'm
Well,
doing.
they could look at us and say, you'd like to buy it, and then you can do anything you want to.
Now they can,
Just saying.
they can amend the covenant.
They can.
Skylar Milton, we had two from 80 to 80-20, but they had to have like a 2/3 majority vote to have it happen, and the people that were there, even the ones that lived there, didn't want to limit their choice, so it never happened, but they can amend their covenants. Of course, it's not gonna happen when you've got 40% ownership from the guy that's leasing it, so,
Right,
but down the road.
but that's gonna be.
That would have to be homeowners, so
Right.
somebody renting is not gonna come in just to have
To say you can't rent,
Yeah,
yeah.
it didn't happen in Skylar's one, they were trying really hard over there to get it done, but it didn't.
Okay, mine's not in here.
One of those situations you'd like to be able to help, but it's like, this is one of those times where you can't knock on the door and say, I'm from the government, I'm here to help.
I'm here to help you out before you come in.
All right, next we have communities of distinction. Some of you may remember, I think they contacted us last year. They've contacted us again this year. It's a TV program. Terry Bradshaw, is I guess the host you would call him. Anyway, they focus on communities throughout the United States where people would go to raise a family to retire. They send you this thing and it sounds wonderful, and then they say, oh, by the way, there's a scheduling fee. So it's a 5-minute segment on a 30-minute show. It's broadcast 20 times, 1 national broadcast on Fox Business, and 19 regional broadcasts on either ABC or Fox, not necessarily ABC or Fox, but affiliates channels. And it's $19,400 scheduling fee. So Brian and I have been looking around. I think the idea of having something like this, if you go, you can YouTube and you can see them. They're not even the best of quality. They use a lot of still pictures. They're all the exact same format. Terry Bradshaw's not real animated in giving his speech about it. But we did talk about, Butch and Brian and I talked about it would be nice for the city to have some type of promotional piece to show. So Brian's in the process of asking around and seeing about some short segment videos. We've gotten some price quotes anywhere from $800, which is not a good quality. You get what you pay for, up to like $14,000. So he's going to work on that. We're going to put it on a future work session. Probably because we would need to film things like the farmer's market and football games and things like that. It wouldn't be something that we would do now. We'd have to wait until the season starts again. But something for council to think about. But the producer for Communities of Distinction is going to call back tomorrow, so I needed to get a yay or a nay from council if this was anything that we want to do.
Thanks for the great idea.
We know a guy.
We got a guy.
Does great work.
All right, update on the feasibility study for Western North Road and the ARC grant application.
Didn't break me up, so I can't tell you where we are.
Eric?
I was not given the information. I can tell you that the ARC grant application is out and due November 10th.
Out now. Have we gained any motion towards filling it out?
Well, we're already past the
We
10th.
do.
That was last week.
November.
Oh, November 10th.
Have we downloaded it, started the process, or?
The DDA has it on their agenda this week.
So who will be actually writing that grant?
That hasn't been talked about yet.
Well, we got till November 9th, right?
It did just come out last week.
I suggest we get on it, if we're gonna be, you know, I suggest we be, just my suggestion.
Can we, Mr. Houston, can you put that back on for an update on the 27th again? Discussion of board retreat. At our mayor and council retreat, we talked about trying to do a full board retreat before November 15th. I don't know if that's something we want to try to work out now, if we want to wait till this is back.
Of a board retreat, what are we talking about?
We talked about getting all of the boards together.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, we need to do something sooner rather than later. The longer we wait, the
Well, we
less
start
time
making dates,
we will-
start
I'm gonna lose
close
them.
the dates.
Well, would a Saturday morning make the most sense from a timing perspective?
Well,
Or
I
is
know
Saturday?
if everybody could email maybe 3 or 4 dates to Butch, start looking at Saturdays, and then maybe 1 or 2 dates during the week, so that he can try to get some dates together by the end of this week. He'll be back tomorrow, right? Maybe get those done by the end of this week.
Well, look at November or October and November. October goes too good.
Yeah, we're halfway through October.
Yeah.
We said we were gonna try to have it before November 15th, so if we could look between now and then and see what some good dates would be.
Yeah, I think I'm full up on October.
Yeah, October.
25th is Fall Festival. We can't get it next week, so I mean, we're in November 8th. It's gonna be the first or the second Saturday in November. Yeah. You get that?
Well, why don't we look at those 2 dates then? Just limit those dates to first.
Well, I mean, if we wanna meet our 15th, I mean, that's really theoretically the only 2 dates that.
I know November 8th wouldn't be a problem.
We gotta find out about the boards also, so we need
Yeah.
to get out to them.
Right. And I think that
November, we have a 1st, a 8th, and a 15th. So we have.
Oh, no, I'm not gonna be here on the 8th. I was mistaken.
Councilman Kraus isn't here, Mr. Sanders isn't here. I don't have my calendar in front of me, so let's, everybody send some email Butch. We can look at those 3 Saturdays. And also, if you want, maybe pick 2 weekdays, that would be good for you between now and November 15th. And let Butch come up with some dates and send those out, make sure they work for council before we contact the board members. County right-of-way maintenance, chief.
I don't think he's heard anything back from them in terms of whether or not they're willing to contribute money toward that. But that's what he's trying to work out. And then we know Kim's retiring, so I guess we know. That's who I know that's who he was talking with, so we'll just have to wait and see.
You know who's taking Tim's place?
Well, as interim Chuck, that doesn't mean he'll, Chuck Bailey, that doesn't mean that he will get it.
So eventually we're gonna have to make a decision whether we wanna wait and see if the county's gonna pay or if we just wanna start cutting that right away. Like we talked about in retreat, but Mr. Richardson said we put that, I guess, back on October 27th.
In November, we won't have to do it in March.
Yeah.
We'll have to do it.
It's called good planning. Once.
Then we will have to do it again till
Right.
March.
CFI arm max, do you know?
I mean, I know that that's been talked out with DOT, and I haven't know if we've heard back.
It's my understanding that Ms. Danita White sent an email last week and that the difference was around $75,000. It's considerably less than what we expected, but I don't know if that is accurate, so.
I haven't heard back.
If we can ask Mr. Sanders if he can send us an email out this week as to that. Because that's a big difference between the $500,000 we were talking about. I mean, that would be per the light.
And that's for the arms rather than the bridge, or
No, it's the bridge rather
It's the
than the
truss,
arm.
yeah.
Rather than the spans wire.
Right.
City website discussion?
I've got a list of Gwinnett County and outside the county websites, their city websites. I think we need to start looking at it to try to get a direction. We talked about revising it, and I don't see any real sense in reinventing the wheel. Norcross has what I think is a very good site, and I think this Civic Plus is an organization that supplies websites. I don't know anything about it, but I think if we go through these, get an idea of what we want in terms of the website look and feel, we'll be a lot closer to figuring out what we need. I'll email you an electronic version of this, so you just click and go tomorrow, but Peachtree City and Norcross have a similar look and feel, and they're both done by the same organization. And I thought it was very high quality. You just have to figure out where people going to the website go and make it easy for them. And each of these websites has good and bad points. I think you can look at them and say, here's what we want. I think we should have something where anybody can get where they want from the home page. You don't have to go to another page, and then you get there. You can go to the home page, pick what you like, and get to that section, and then browse around the section.
Well, we have some people in the city who are pretty sharp on this stuff. Why can't we, put together a committee of people that are in the know about this stuff and let them, I know, we get a buddy
Oh, I
on
know, but
EDA,
I think
that's just
that's
something
what
we got.
we're looking for.
I think we need 2 things. First, what we want, and 2, an idea of a budget, because, I mean, I'm sure some people could come up with great websites, but it's also gonna cost us $30,000, and so we need to decide really what our priorities are, and then say, okay, this is
Yeah, I
what we
think
want.
if we get one and we say, here's essentially what we want, then we can go to whoever here and say, yeah, if you do this, it'll cost you this much, if you do that, it'll cost you.
I think a committee is a good idea when we're actually gonna decide, what links do we want on it, and what's important to you on the website, but as far as like the design and functionality and price, I think we need to get some preliminary decisions.
Did you put the stat website on that list? Add stats website, since it's been updated recently.
All right.
It seems rather user friendly.
Just these have all the same things that the city needs.
Right, but
Yeah, we can-
from a formatting standpoint, look, maybe need to see something else, because those blocks can work the same way. For
And
city,
I don't know that there isn't a template out there that you just buy the template and you go bing, 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 and you're done. I don't know if there is or there isn't. It's possible. We're not the first city to need a website like that.
Terry, an update?
Yeah, I just have a couple of things that I'd like to share. As parliamentarian for the city council and mayor, I'd like to recommend that the council consider changing the city code regarding the motion of appeal. It was brought to my attention by Mr. Powell, actually, a number of meetings ago, in a similar discussion, that under a point of order and appeal regarding decorum, that particular motion is debatable. Robert's Rules of Order says it isn't in that work, in that parliamentary guide. The city code says it is. I would like to recommend that the city council and mayor consider changing the motion of appeal in the city code to match Robert's Rules of Order, simply for the reason that when someone breaks a rule of decorum, or it's a matter of question and somebody calls a point of order, and then somebody disagrees with that assessment by the chair or someone else who would call a point of order, then it's perhaps a breach of decorum. Then then somebody wants to appeal, there's a second, and it's debatable. The breach hasn't been settled. And what you find yourself in is you find yourself in a situation where you're debating about a breach of debate. And that's why Robert's Rules of Order doesn't allow debate an appeal regarding decorum. Because you essentially find yourself in a vortex where there's no settled point. Because that same attitude of the breach would likely go right over into the other debate. So that's my recommendation. I think it's something to consider. Likely, it would rarely happen in any board or assembly. But if it were to get to that point, if there was a breach and an appeal is debatable over decorum, I think you have a problem. So that's my recommendation for mayor and city council. One more thing. I sense it would be a good idea to provide a little bit of instruction regarding the concept of unanimous consent in case there's some misunderstanding. What unanimous consent is in Robert's Rules of Order, it's essentially a vote. Someone can ask for unanimous consent, and if nobody says anything, then the chair would say, okay, well, it's as good as passed, it's approved. And when somebody asks for unanimous consent, and the chair says if there are no objections, and there are no objections, it's the same as a vote. It's an official vote, and it's recorded as the motion passed. A good example might be when an assembly has been busy and the chair believes that it's good time for a recess. The chair might say, if there are no objections, we'll take a recess. Pause. Then there's no objections. Okay, we'll recess for whatever time is stated. And the reason I'm pointing that out is because it's a common tool in parliamentary procedure that's used for expedite business. For things that are just, we know it's going to pass, it's a vast majority, and so unanimous consent is a tool in that regard. So I'm just explaining that to the mayor and city council, just in case there was a little bit of misunderstanding about what that is and how that's used. It's helpful, and again, unanimous consent, if there are no objection. If there is an objection, there's a vote. If somebody says, I'd like to ask for unanimous consent, or if the chair says, if there are no objections, and somebody says, I object, that's not an insult. That's not a, it's just that, yeah, actually I do think we need a vote, that's all that means. And then there's an official vote that follows.
With regard to your first segment there, can you draft that information and get it to Mr. Powell so we can look at it in draft form?
Be glad to.
Update on Hampton Ridge and Wisteria Drive?
Oh,
I'm sorry, were you?
Yeah, I am done. Thank you.
just passing out two sets of bid documents. had an independent party actually do the assessment of what needed to take place. The two bid numbers, as I understand it, are $24,367.30 or $16,120.
And the termite inspection was done.
And
The termite inspection was done. It's not all the same.
Y'all recall, that's the house we're talking about, one with the ivy growing on the side. One has a little more detail, but the backdrop of that is we have our own inspector, Lincoln Associates, that really define the project. And so even though the lower bid is less precise in terms of all the detail in it, it's tied to the specs that Mr. Lowe is requiring. So,
Do you have a copy of this?
Yeah.
I don't have a copy, I have one.
So we sent out basically the scope of work to
I had Mr. Logan inspect the property and basically tell me what it was worth.
the scope of work, yeah.
And he set the scope.
And that
We
scope of
set
work
the scope
is,
out. That's
on PDRs, is met as well. Even, I mean, they put it in this format. It meets that. Exactly.
And this isn't something we have to bid, we can just,
It's a project that you want to publicly seek bids, which is, I think, what, it wasn't done in the advertising formality, but, and that's up to you. I think these are low enough. You don't expect nuisance actions to be really costly, and we're pushing the edge of that authority in terms of non-bid under our own ordinance. Yeah.
because isn't it, I think it's $10,000 under our policy.
But that's why we put it on. The bigger question is, do you spend the money? You know, see what, now you know how much this is gonna cost, whether you rebid it or send it to contract. You know, that's sort of where we are.
We sent it out to 5 local guys that work here. Well, only received 2.
So it wasn't a formal bid process,
was
but
not.
you did send out the offer to several companies.
And, okay, so it wasn't just these two people that we called
No,
up and
it's
said.
all we got back, we sent out 5.
And that can be summarized, just like we do on the bid process. We had these many people send it to, and we had these 2 respondents.
Correct.
I mean, does that put us in any kind of issue?
I don't think so in these situations. You know, you're feeling your way. It's not like you're doing a public project.
Right.
You're really trying to correct the nuisance, and you've given the property owner a notice to do it themselves. It's going to attach to the lien of the property. And so to have a list of people who provide this service and bid from that list is fine.
Well,
And I don't remember, we had this money budgeted, but what was the amount? It was coming from last,
30,000.
but it wasn't just for this property, is that
No,
right?
it's for the
Yeah,
whole year.
for anything.
All I can tell you is very clear, this is, it's called an exacting estimate. It's one that's pretty widely used in the insurance industry, and this guy does lay out everything he's going to do. This guy just says, yeah, I'll charge it 2/3 of the price. I'll be very,
He's the guy that.
This is not called this is not a retail system. Matter of fact, I can run this and tell you those exact figures of it. This is scary. This is scary. If he doesn't lay it out what he's doing, you're just, you know, it's between your interpretation, his interpretation of what vines are growing on the dwelling. If that doesn't fall to interpretation, what this guy's telling you, so we linear feet of this, so we linear feet of that, it's countable. Just my opinion. But there's $8,000 difference in price too, but we can find out what this is. Can't do the other one.
So but the question, I guess the first question is, looking at these figures, is this something we want to go forward with? And then the second question will be, who do we want to use?
What are the ramifications if we don't?
That house that's over my neighborhood is making my house look bad.
Well, I would say that's a personal interest, Mr. Ritz.
Yes.
Well, there's some of his neighbors agree with him, like,
Well, I think it, potentially it sends the message that, okay, we've had enough. And it won't take long for the wind to catch direction. And a lot of people start hearing that. And,
This house has an approximate value in saleable form of what?
Well, the house 2 doors down from it was on the market for 120, and I went into it, they sold it for 170. It's about 160,000, 170,000.
So there's
Right, right.
If it were
Yeah,
done.
right.
not much chance that we're gonna get nailed on it. We'll get our money back.
Well, yeah, but I don't think this is gonna bring it to that either. I mean, this is just gonna, all this does is,
That's just the outside.
all this does is make it look pretty to drive by. It doesn't fix it the inside. You probably gotta spend another 30,000 on the inside.
this is probably more goodwill for the neighborhood than it is anything else.
So, well, it stops it from rotting out.
Well,
Of course,
and creating a very hazardous situation. I mean, we're just getting ahead of
And
a
it
very
helps secure
hazardous.
it where we've had a lot of problems with. I mean, they've done some work, they have upgraded it. They put some, with the metal doors and everything else.
They put those nice commercial
Plywood,
doors on.
plywood on the windows.
Alright, so is there enough of interest that we wanna put this on our next regular agenda and we can make a decision as far as the actual bid on our
Yeah,
next regular
I would
agenda?
say, yeah.
Because even if the house falls in from the inside, we're not addressing any of the inside, right?
And if you wanna look at it,
So even if it falls in from the inside, the lot value would have to have, cover it.
a sample of the other guy's work, he's the guy, Mr. Rodriguez, that's doing the government wall, all those houses. It's a good reference point.
What about 2410 West Area Drive?
it is in, still with the Mr. Lucky, I guess, making a determination.
Well, after we spoke about that, there was some interest from the church, a different church. Well, we found out it was the first church that they should ever have the final going to purchase it, didn't they? So we pushed them, and they basically finally said, no, we would rather them fix the course than us. And they finally said we can't do it, so Craig went out on Monday, and he's compiling that report, and it's the same thing, but it's going to be 4 or 5 times more than that. To repair substantial damage on the fascia and the soffit. And there's a lot of stuff going on. It's a commercial building. The roof is leaking, and so it's gonna be a little. We'll get it. We'll get it, and we'll scope it out the same way. And do you want to see the scope first before we bid it?
No.
So
How
if-
is it even it's a like a lump sum? Yeah, I'll do it.
on the fitness center, refresh my memory, did the church buy it and the church owns it, or they never bought it? They got it right.
Their financing probably.
Okay.
They were required.
Big enough. And this owner now is like on the brink of foreclosure too. So accordingly, he said they're gonna make money making repairs.
But there's another church that's interested.
There was, and then they weren't able to, I guess, negotiate enough to work the price in, but they moved on. So here we are. This same spot. Now, we could do some cleanup and stuff around it, maybe not, we can do stuff like that. We can get this polished to the repairing structure or something. That's just the outside too, not the inside.
Review of local government risk management services. I'm going to ask if this be placed on the October 27th agenda, is a work session agenda as well. To the state or GMA, but every year we come and we get audited. Mr. Shields came and audited the city. He provided a list of recommendations to the city. I mean, we passed, but he also always provides a list of recommendations of things we can improve on. So I wanted to go over that with council and see if there's anything we wanted to take action on, or if there's something that Butch was handling. I know that Councilman Kraus, some of it dealt with emergency preparedness plans and things like that, so I'd like to wait until both Mr. Sanders and Councilman Kraus are here to go over them. So that is the end of our regular work session agenda. During the work session of the mayor and city council of Snellville, Mayor Couts announced certain matters should be discussed in a closed session of the meeting, as council provides the city with respect to closing the meeting.